Today at the National Press Club, China's ambassador to Australia, Xiao. The ambassador was previously China's top diplomatic representative in Indonesia before taking up his current position in Canberra early this year. Here's Xiao with today's National Press Club address.
Hello and welcome to the National Press Club of Australia for today's Westpac address. I'm David Crowe, Chief Political Correspondent for the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, and also a Director of the club here. Our guest today is His Excellency Xiao, Ambassador of the People's Republic of China. With his address to the National Press Club of Australia, this is his first address to the National Press Club. He arrived here in Australia in April after a career in the diplomatic service in many countries for China, most immediately just 4 years in Indonesia, a brief stop in Beijing, and then here to his appointment in Australia. Over his career, he has served in Ethiopia, India, and many other countries before this appointment in Australia. Talking to him before this speech, I found it interesting that his background includes many among other subjects, Western literature, including iconic American author Jack London. So he's a man of very many interests. We welcome him to the club today. Please welcome him to the podium.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Well, it's a big audience today, and I'm very much honored. Thanks, David, for your kind introduction. And good to see so many friends from the press, including some of my colleagues from the diplomatic corps in Canberra. And so many friends from the press. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It's indeed my great pleasure to address the National Press Club. Thank you all for your presence today. My special thanks to Peter Phillips. He's there. We talked about addressing the NPC last month when I was in Sydney, and thank you for your advice. And thanks to Maurice Riley, CEO of NPC, for writing me to extend your kind invitation, which gives me an opportunity to share my views on the much discussed, much talked about China-Australia relations. I feel very much honored to be Chinese ambassador to this country. Both China and Australia are great countries. We are two great peoples. Our two peoples have always cherished friendly sentiments towards each other. In the past 6 or 7 months since I came here as ambassador, I did some travel, both in the eastern coast and also on the western coast. And I try to reach out and meet as many people as possible, including the federal governments, the state governments, also so many colleagues and friends from different walks of life in Australia. And my feeling is very strong about the hospitality and friendship that Australian people are having towards the Chinese people, towards China. And I also feel very strongly about their expectations for a sound, stable, friendly, and cooperative relationship between two countries. And as ambassador, as a new ambassador, coming at a very special juncture, I have been very, very, very encouraged. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this year happens to be the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between China and Australia. If we look back at the past 50 years, we have indeed made great achievements in developing our bilateral relations. Contacts and exchanges at all levels and in all fields have been very frequent. Friendship and mutual trust have been constantly enhanced. The progress in practical cooperation has been incredibly outstanding. Here I have some figures for you. China has been Australia's largest trading partner since 2009. Our trade volume has surged from less than 100 million US dollars in the year 1972 to over 207 billion US dollars in the year 2021. That's counting for 34.2% of Australia's total import and export in the year of 2021. And Australia's trade surplus with China has reached 60 billion US dollars in that year alone. From that year, we have another 4 years, and that number has almost doubled. You can imagine this is a huge number. China is Australia's top export destination, with export to China accounting for 38.8% of Australia's total export. In goods in 2021, China is also Australia's largest source of imports, with imports from China taking up 28.1% of Australia's total imports of goods in 2021. And starting from 2018, China became Australia's largest source country of international tourists and tourist spending, as over 1 million Chinese tourists spend over 10 billion Australian dollars annually during their stay in Australia. Despite the impact of COVID-19, China continues to be the largest source of international students for Australia. As of May this year, there are 131,400 Chinese students studying in Australia, accounting for about 28% of Australia's total international students. Well, ladies and gentlemen, these are just some of the many, many figures, but they are telling us a very important fact, that the cooperation between China and Australia is important to both sides, and it's mutually beneficial in nature. In the past couple of years, unfortunately, the relationship between China and Australia was caught in difficult situation due to reasons known to all. This has greatly impacted the bilateral exchange and cooperation in various fields and severely damaged the friendship between our two peoples. This is something we don't want to see, and it goes against the interests of our two countries and our two peoples. Now, with the recent federal election, we have a new Australian government. Of course, this is the domestic affair of this country. It's the choice of the Australian people. But it did provide us with a possible opportunity to reset the relationship between our two countries. Chinese Premier Li Keqiang sent his congratulatory messages to the new Prime Minister of Australia, and Prime Minister Albanese returned with a letter of thanks. Defense ministers, foreign ministers from our two countries held their bilateral meetings. We have also seen ministerial communications between the two countries on education, on economy, and on trade. The meeting between the two foreign ministers was especially productive. Important consensus were reached. The two sides reaffirmed their comprehensive strategic partnership and expressed willingness to strengthen engagements, enhance mutual trust, properly handle differences, remove obstacles, and promote practical cooperation in a spirit of mutual respect and mutual benefit. These consensus are significant for the future development of China-Australia relations. The positive progress in our bilateral relations is encouraging. It's an encouraging start. And of course, there's a lot of work to be done. It's very important for both sides to make further efforts to keep the momentum take actions for substantial progress, and strive to bring our bilateral relations back on the right track. In this connection, State Councillor Wang Yi from China put forward proposals from the Chinese side, which were released briefly. By the way, it was proposals. If you refer to the Chinese version, it was 希望, means hope, and it's not demand, as we've been reported in certain media. And I would like to share with you my views on the following points. First, to reshape the perception on China and regard China as a partner rather than a rival. The essence of the point made by the Chinese side is actually the relationship between China and the current international order. Is China champion or challenger? The fact of the matter is China is a participant, a builder, and a contributor to the existing international system. China is the founding member of the United Nations and the first country to sign the UN Charter. China is a member of almost all universal intergovernmental organizations in the world. China is the largest troops contributing country among the P5s of the UN Security Council, and we are the second largest budget contributor to the UN peacekeeping. China attained the poverty reduction goal of the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development 10 years ahead of schedule, contributing more than 70% to the global poverty reduction efforts. As UN General Secretary Antonio Guterres said, in the decades since, China has become an increasingly important contributor to the work of the organization and a major pillar of international cooperation. In the past more than 40 years or more of reforming and opening up to the outside world, tremendous changes have happened in China. China's comprehensive national strength has been significantly enhanced, but China's diplomatic philosophy, China's foreign policy remain unchanged. China supports necessary reform and improvement to the current international order and system, but China never seeks to start a new one. China firmly opposes the international system with the UN at its core. The international order based on international law and the basic norms governing international relations based on the purpose and principles of the UN Charter. Because it serves the fundamental interests of China. China is developing, but China's development is to achieve above and beyond, not to challenge or replace any other country. No matter how China develops itself now or in the future, China will never seek hegemony, expansion, or sphere of influence. The development of China-Australia relations is at a critical juncture. China's policy of friendship and cooperation towards Australia remains unchanged. An objective and a rational perception of Australia on China and a positive and pragmatic policy towards China are fundamentally significant for a long-term, stable, and predictable partnership between China and Australia. Second, to create a favorable atmosphere and consolidate the cooperative relations of mutual benefit. Practical cooperation has been the backbone for China-Australia relations, making greater contributions to the development of China-Australia relations for the past 50 years. Even in times of difficulties and fluctuations, as we experienced in the past several years, extensive and in-depth practical cooperation between our two countries played a special role as a stabilizer and a ballast without which our bilateral relations could have been even worse. China and Australia are economically highly complementary towards each other. Australia has been a long-term stable supplier of mineral and energy resources for China. China has been a competitive commodity supplier for Australia as well. Such practical cooperation has fostered a close partnership between our two countries. When we cooperate, we both win. When we don't, we both lose. So it is imperative for the governments of our two countries to adopt positive policies towards each other, take positive and concrete measures to improve the atmosphere of cooperation, solve differences through consultation, create favorable conditions to better serve our mutually beneficial cooperation. At present, the global economy is facing difficulties such as high inflation, weak recovery, and tight supply chains. The World Bank forecasts that the global growth will slow down and economic recession will be hard to avoid. Under such circumstances, to maintain practical cooperation between China and Australia is not only conducive to the stable economic development of our two countries, but also will carry special significance for us to deal with the current global economic challenges. Thirdly, to respect each other, seek common ground, properly handle difference. There are many areas where China and Australia share common interests. There are many issues on which China and Australia have common grounds. And these are the areas we have been cooperating, and we should continue to cooperate to the interests of both sides. Areas like economic development, improvement of people's livelihood, environmental protection, regional cooperation, climate change, combating cross-border crimes, free trade, multilateralism, among others. At the same time, as the old saying goes, no two leaves are alike. China and Australia, we are different in many aspects, in history, in culture, in religion, in development stage, and in political system. Different as we are, there are no areas where we have fundamental conflicts of interest. So it is very important for both sides to take constructive approach towards these differences. Try to narrow down differences through communication and dialogues in a spirit of mutual respect. The least thing we should do is to allow these differences to obstruct, even hijack the overall relationship and cooperation between our two countries. The world is diversified and the political system is taking different forms in different countries. Whether a certain country has chosen a good political system or not, it's for the people of that country to have the say. As we say it in China, only the wearer of the shoes knows whether the shoes fit or not. The key question is whether the system could help its people to live a better life. The system of socialism with Chinese characteristics under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party has achieved remarkable success. It fits China, it's good for China, and it has won the heartfelt support of 1.4 billion Chinese people. Here are some figures. After 40 years of reform and opening up from the year 1978 to the year 2018, China's economy has grown 225-fold. Per capita GDP has increased from $155 in the year 1978 to $8,800 in the year 2018. per capita income has grown 22.8-fold, and China has contributed over 30% of the world's economic growth, and it has become the world's leading power of economic development. China has successfully built up a modestly prosperous society in all respects. Chinese people have been lifted out of absolute poverty in a complete way. The efficiency of China's whole process, people's democracy, speaks for itself. It took China decades to go through the development journey that took developed countries centuries to complete. Australia is a diversified country in many aspects, and diversity is an important contributor to Australia's success. The past 5 decades have shown that China and Australia, we can be friends, we can be partners, in spite of our differences in political system and development stage. The fourth point, to develop an inclusive relationship based on the interests of our own two peoples. As independent sovereign states, China and Australia each has its own national interests. Each also conducts exchanges with other countries in the world and builds various partnerships. China and Australia share mutual interests with each other, while at the same time, each shares mutual interests with other partners as well. One's interests are sometimes the same or similar with the others, but sometimes not, which is pretty normal. China respects Australia's normal exchanges and cooperation with other countries. China has no intention to interfere in or undermine Australia's relations with a third party. At the same time, it is our belief that China and Australia should make independent judgments and decisions to develop our own bilateral relations based on the interests of the people of China and the people of Australia, free from interference from a third party. 50 years ago, Prime Minister Whitman overcame tremendous difficulties and challenges, made the brave decision to establish diplomatic relations between Australia and China. In the initiation of cooperation with China and the engagement with Asia have proven that Australia is fully capable of playing its role independently in international affairs. As an important major country in Asia-Pacific, as a founding member of APEC, Australia has its unique geographical and cultural advantages. Australia could play an even bigger role to promote exchanges and cooperation between the East and the West, and could make even greater contribution to the prosperity and stability of the Asia-Pacific region. Fifthly, and the last point, to promote mutual understanding between our two peoples, to lay down a solid foundation of mutual friendship. Amity between our peoples holds the key to sound relations between our two countries. Over the past 50 years, there have been established more than 100 pairs of sister provinces, sister states, and sister cities between China and Australia. Before COVID-19 pandemic, there were nearly 200 flights between our two countries every week, carrying nearly 2 million passengers visiting each other every year. And China has been Australia's largest source of international students for 7 consecutive years since 2015. And in addition to this, there are more than 1.2 million overseas Chinese working and living in different parts of Australia, making outstanding contribution to Australia's economic, social, and multicultural prosperity, and at the same time to the friendship, exchange, and cooperation between our two countries. Everyone is entitled to his own views, but unarguably, the policy adopted and the information released by the government do have direct influence on the attitudes of the public. If the government of our two countries adopt positive policies and positive measures towards each other, protect and encourage the friendship between our two peoples, it will be highly conducive to a healthy and stable development of our bilateral relationship. Media has a special role to play in the forming of public opinion. Here at MPC, I'm talking to the media, but allow me to be frank. At least this is my feeling, how I feel about it since I came here about 6 months ago, 7 months ago. That here in this country, the media coverage on China are mostly not positive, or to be straightforward, are mostly negative. It is simply difficult to find out news about China that is positive. We do have, but it's pretty low, disproportionately low. No country is perfect. No country is perfect. However, a coverage on a country that is always in a negative perspective is nowhere near to telling the truth about that country. That's how I feel about it. And the coverage on China of such kind is, on many occasions, many times misleading. It's also harming the friendship between our two peoples. So it's important to take an objective perspective on China. Tell stories about China in all dimensions. That's going to be helpful for the Australian public to know what China truly is. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this about our bilateral relations. Well, the Taiwan question has received much attention recently. On August 2nd, the U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited China's Taiwan region. This is a serious violation of the One China principle and violation of the provisions of the three China-U.S. joint communiques. It has a severe impact on the political foundation of China-U.S. relations and seriously infringes upon China's sovereignty and territorial integrity. It gravely undermines peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait and sends a seriously wrong signal to the separatist forces for the so-called Taiwan independence. Speaker Pelosi insisted on visiting Taiwan region in disregard of China's strong opposition, making it clear to the world it was the U.S. side who first took provocative actions to change and undermine the status quo. And it is the U.S. side that should and must take full responsibility for the escalation of tensions in the Taiwan Strait. China is compelled to take countermeasures to safeguard its national sovereignty and territorial integrity, which is legitimate and justified. Australia government has reaffirmed on several occasions its commitment to the One China principle. As is clearly stated in the 1972 joint communique between China and Australia. Here I quote, "The Australian government recognizes the government of the People's Republic of China as the sole legal government of China, acknowledges the position of the Chinese government that Taiwan is a province of the People's Republic of China," end quote. The One China principle is a solemn commitment by successive Australian governments, either it's Liberal or Labor, for the past 5 decades. This principle should be strictly abided by and fully honored. It should not be misinterpreted or compromised in practice. We hope that Australian side could take China-Australia relations with serious attitude. Take the One China principle seriously. Handle the Taiwan question with caution, but without discount. Ladies and gentlemen, the coming December 22nd, will mark the 50th anniversary of the diplomatic relations between China and Australia. I think it's perfect time for our two countries to review the past, look into the future, take concrete actions in a spirit of mutual respect and mutual benefit, strive together to bring China-Australia comprehensive strategic partnership back on the right track. It's going to be in the interest of our two countries and our two peoples. Thank you for your presence and thank you for your patience. Thank you.